You already? Well, we're happy to have another edition of our Lunch and Learns during the month of August today, and then for managers on August 22nd. I'm happy to turn this over to my friend Malia Jensen, who serves on the committee with me to discuss Section 504 and how we can be more accessible or provide fruitful products to our clients and our customers, our stakeholders.
Thanks, Gary.
You're welcome.
As Gary said, my name is Malia Jensen. I work in the offices of hearings and inquiries. I'm part of the customer accessibility resource staff, which you'll learn more about today. Before we get started, I want to let those of you on the phone or watching on YouTube know that if you would like a copy of the presentation, please send an email to Susanna Lang, and that's susanna.lang@cms.hhs.gov. And she'll be happy to email you a copy of the presentation. So we'll maybe give a minute or two for her to do that. While she's doing that, I'll just give a brief introduction. As many of you might have saw last week, there is now a mandatory Section 504 training, and so some of this material will look similar. However, we decided that we wanted to do a little bit deeper dive and give employees an opportunity to ask questions. So that's why we decided to put together this Lunch and Learn. So we are excited that you are all here. I believe that most of the rest of the car staff will be joining the phones at some point during this. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing is the background. As many of you know, CMS is mandated to ensure that individuals with disabilities have equal access to its information and programs. And there are several laws that govern this. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and its updates, Section 504 and Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act, and Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act. Section 504 is very broad in scope. However, today, all we're going to cover are external communications. Next. For communications accessibility, the responsible for the get my tongue tied here. The responsibility for CMS to make its communications accessible extends to all programs, all communications, even for people who aren't receiving services from CMS currently. Ensuring information is provided to everyone in a timely manner is everyone's goal. And it takes everyone to make sure that this happens. Next, just a brief overview of Sections 504 and 508, which I'm sure many of us are familiar with 508, although maybe not so much with 504. Everyone. Both of Section 508 and 504 complement each other to support accessibility. Section 508 requires that all of your technology and electronic communications, such as websites, be accessible to persons with disabilities. Section 504 requires accessibility regardless of technological tools. a beneficiary could call up and ask for something in Braille, even if your website is accessible. A couple of additional examples that I found on hhs.gov, and this is also included in the resources example or section of this training, are these. A person who is blind can call up and request an audio or Braille version of a report that is currently hosted on a 508 accessible website. And a person who has a manual impairment that limits his ability to use a computer could call up and request a print document. And in both cases, the agency would be required to fulfill these requests under 504. And as you all know, and this is also included in the resources section, each of your components has a Section 508 clearance officer should you have additional questions or need guidance on Section 508. Next. Auxiliary aids, which is one of the services that CARS provides, are services or devices that allow individuals with disabilities to access or agency programs, giving them an equal opportunity to participate. Examples of auxiliary aids include Braille or large print for persons who are blind or have low vision, sign language services for persons who are deaf or hard of hearing, and also additional resources for persons who have cognitive impairments.
Let's also add CMS role approver.
Please
So click on add role.
Yeah.
If you guys
It looks like you already have one for health home, so we'll do just for eligibility.
Can the folks on the phone
Yes,
please mute their
silence
lines?
your phone.
Thank you. They took the words right out of my mouth.
All right, the mic right here.
The most important thing you need to remember about auxiliary aids is CMS does not charge for these services. A person does not need to prove their disability in order to receive these aids. And it is critical that we fulfill these requests in a timely manner. And if not, this could have potential consequences for the beneficiary or consumer and the agency. Next. If you receive an individual request, a beneficiary who contacts you or who you speak with who needs an auxiliary aid, try to get as much information from them as you can, such as their name, address, phone number, and what it is they're seeking, what publication, form, etc. And provide that information to the CARS team. You can also, if they would rather get in contact with us, please pass along our contact information, which is also included in this presentation. Next. Just some things to keep in mind when you're creating content that is going to be public facing. Think about what it would take to turn it into an accessible document. What questions you might want to ask yourself are, how will this translate into Braille? Will a person who has low vision using a black and white printer be able to print this document and read it effectively? And CARS can help you, partner with you to create a communication plan and help you to figure out and navigate these things.
Yeah, folks mute their phones.
Yeah.
Guys, if you could please mute your
Please
phone,
mute it.
we would be very appreciative. Next slide.
Can't
Can
we
you
mute
disconnect
them?
something?
There's a control on that so that you
Yeah.
can mute them.
Then they won't hear us.
Then you won't hear if you.
Oh, it's a two-way?
Yeah, there's
Oh,
unfortunately
that's too
no.
bad.
Please silence your phone.
I think they're in. Anyway, moving right along. That's something to figure out before the lunch and learn on the 22nd. So on the next slide, we have the car's contact information, our phone number, email address, fax number, I believe. And while we don't have a specific person listed, if you use any of these channels to get in touch with us, these channels are monitored daily, so you'll get in touch with the analyst of the day who will either be able to help you or get you connected to someone who can. Okay. Next. And just a reminder that if you are a CMS employee who needs a reasonable accommodation, this is not something that CARS handles. However, you can get in touch with the Office of Equal Employment Opportunity and Civil Rights, and they'll be more than happy to help you. Their contact information, phone number and email is listed on this slide. Next. And then we just have the next 3 slides are resource slides that give references and additional information. And finally, we're going to open it up for questions if anybody has any.
What do you focus on the room here, Malia? You can mute them if you want to.
Okay.
I think we can use independently. How loud can we hear them? Them with us.
Yeah, I don't have.
And that is, muted. So we'll definitely do that before the next one. So does anybody have any questions in the room? We also, I want to point out, because I heard her come in, we have CARS Director Bridget Berardino with us.
No. Sorry I was late.
Oh, no worries. So does anybody in the room have any questions?
Yes, I do.
First of all, great presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Does 508 not apply to us as federal employees at all? It is only for external customers?
Oh, no, absolutely not. It absolutely applies to us. The focus of this presentation was external communication, but 508 absolutely applies to federal, as does 504. And they're.
I meant to say 504.
Yeah, 504. It's very broad, and I mean it covers education, higher education. But for the purposes of this presentation, we were simply talking about external communications. But since that's what the CARS team handles, but 504 absolutely applies to federal employees.
Hey, Malia, this is Aaron Allen. Just to reiterate, the 508 requirement also, extends not just to internal, external. It's for your applications, usage of websites, any content that's being posted, any electronic information that's being shared or stored within SharePoint, collaborated or communicated amongst your team, as long as it's not, in draft. Once it goes final, the 508 applicability applies. It's for both internal and external customers, and both public and inter-facing web content.
Okay.
Separated or communicated amongst your team.
What is he?
In draft.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you interjecting and reminding us of what Section 508 is. That's always a good thing to keep in mind for sure.
Okay, so that's taken care
Do we have any additional questions? We finished the presentation early, so we finished the presentation early. I'm sorry, who was that? Somebody had a question, I guess not.
You had mentioned earlier, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, you had mentioned earlier being cognizant of Braille-facing applications or whatever. I've never worked with Braille. Are you just talking like the format of the web page itself, or are you know, is there something specific we should know about Braille in general to?
Oh.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know what you're trying to say. I touched on that when I talked about making public-facing applications. And CARS can certainly work with you on this, because we realize that that's not necessarily going to be something that you know, even though you think of it, it might not be something that you know how to do. And what I meant was, when you create a document, think about how is it going to translate into Braille. So if you have a graphic in that document, like a table, for example, is that going to be something that could be easily transcribed into Braille? Just things like that. But again, that's not something that you have to come up with an answer for on your own. That's one of the reasons that CARS exists, to be able to come alongside you and assist you in the process to help you figure out what's going to work best.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
No problem.
Based on past requests, perhaps, if a beneficiary is looking for something in large print and they were to put a request in for it, about how long does it take to get it back to them? A week, a month, a year, knowing government?
Bridget might be. I'll take a stab at it, but unfortunately our lead ops person is out sick today. I know that once we get a request, we send it to the people who deal with our fulfillment contractor. We work with OC. We've partnered with them, and so we send whatever it is the beneficiary is looking for, and we try to have it turned around with, I believe, is it 14 days, Bridget?
I would say our target is 7 to 14 days, and like Malia said, it really depends on if that process, if it's something that's readily available, it just needs to be converted. That's easier than if it takes some time and back and forth with the beneficiary to find out exactly what they're looking for, and then working with the right component to make sure that we get the right version to the fulfillment contractor out to the Benny. So I would say 7 to 14 days is sort of our average. We're working to constantly improve this process. And we want to partner with the components to make sure that we get, to the extent that we know somebody's preference. For example, if you want a large print MSN, that process is actually already automated. So if people ask for their Medicare summary notice in large print, we already have a process in place that does allow that to happen automatically. And that's another thing that we're trying to make sure we help everyone think about when you're instilling sort of communications with the bennies, that you have processes with which we can make sure that this happens if they do ask for them in a different form.
Well, I had an interesting question. I'm at Wilmer Eye Institute quite often, my own eyesight. And the minute somebody hears where I work, I get all these questions, which is fine, makes me feel needed. And one of them was from someone with low vision, and he had no problem filling in a form, but no matter what he was trying to use, magnifying glasses or anything else, cannot read what's identifying inside of the box to fill in paper forms. And wanted to know if there were large print versions of something like that. Not that he's going to fill in the giant poster-sized form and mail it back, but something that he could read and then go, okay, good, third box down, this is what they're looking for. He does not use a computer.
Well, we are actually in the process of converting some of the more commonly used forms into large print, and we're working to get those posted. Forms such as the MOON, is it the Medicare outpatient observation notice. We're working to have things in the advanced beneficiary notice, just to name a couple. We're working to have those posted to where beneficiaries, the doctors can access those and present those to the beneficiary in a large print form. And if somebody, we're also working on a process to where if somebody did want a large print form, that they'd be able to call us up and get that information, not necessarily to submit, because it that provides or causes other concerns.
More as a guide, so they know it's
exactly,
on a
but
regular one.
Yep, as a guide, we could absolutely do
That would be so helpful to have those things prepared for a lot of instructions. How to request medical review if something's turned down. As I said, not from the perspective of filling it in, and for sake of space, don't take out the fill-in boxes.
Right.
Because that's what he's looking for, to be able to locate where, because he can print well enough to get his information in there.
Right.
But yeah, it was an interesting question because forms are difficult even for me, and they've fixed a good part of my eyesight again.
When I think, like Malia said, to the extent we have a beneficiary that wants to call the CARS team at our number or send us an email, we'll work to get that to them in a large print. But it's also important for all of us as CMS employees that we make sure, especially if we partner with Medicare administrative contractors and others of our partners, like you mentioned, medical review, that they have processes in place where if the beneficiary calls and asks them for something that they've sent them, that they have a process in place to get it to them also. So we're also, you'll see as part of our training, we're trying to emphasize that for everybody, to just think about that next round.
Because these days the providers don't have time to discuss the niceties of you processing the way to get back to them, or to follow their instructions. You're really left on your own to get through that. Thank you.
No problem. And, feel free to, hang on to our contact information. And if you run into something like that again, definitely, feel free to put those people in touch with us, and we'll be happy to answer their questions.
Okay. I usually have answers for questions.
Yeah.
That one totally flummoxed me. And it was the minute he asked, I said, that is so logical. But I hadn't thought of it because I'm used to somebody who can, when I had, you can make it as large as you want on a screen in order to see it. Say, no, everyone doesn't. He just has an audio set up on a cell phone, and that's his electronic contact with the world. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody have any additional questions?
I do have something that I'm going to give you that if you wish you can share the link or the document with everyone. The Pew Research Center came out with an article about a week and a half ago, 7 facts about Americans with disabilities, and it looked across, it was interesting, geographic locations on dominance. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
I have not.
And broke them out instead of just lumping everything into disabilities, between walking, independent living, difference between men and women on likelihood, and some things ethnically, a lot of them by age. A very interesting study, and this is just the article about the study, and it's available publicly. So I don't know who's going to want it.
That sounds
So
interesting.
you can just go online and check it out.
That's great.
And we still have about half an hour. I mean, I'm happy to sit and answer questions as long as people have them, but I also know that everybody's busy, so I'm certainly happy to give you folks half an hour of your life back. So I don't know if anybody has any additional questions, or Bridget, do you have any additional comments?
No, I mean, I think you did a great job.
Yes,
explaining
Yes.
the importance of
Very
this
much.
and helping educate everybody. Again, I know sometimes questions come up later, so we do have the resource box and the phone number if people want to call and get in touch with us. And as you come across problems or issues or questions that come up in your day-to-day work, we'd be happy to coordinate with you.
Is it possible to ask a DERG question that's not, in other words, from our employee resource disability group question now, that's not specifically 504? When you talk about accessibility of things, do we know if anything is going to be done about the things that are out of reach for people who are seated, getting around the building, whether it's the cafeteria, or even we put the voice into the copy machines, but they're up way too high. So, the logical things that no one goes around and checks on, reaching faucets in the little break rooms by the copy rooms on the floors, cannot reach to turn things on and off. So I don't know. A lot of this has gone the route, like 2 years ago, through facilities and meeting with, because I was in on the meeting with GSA, and they promised all kinds of things. Nothing's ever been done about anything. And even though the manager in the cafeteria tries very hard, Mary, she's delightful. The minute she walks away, the other people straighten everything up to not being reachable again. Because they have no X marks the spot. Straws have to be within reach of where people are. So I don't know if it's something Gary
let's
perhaps
table
as our
that.
eminent leader.
Let's table that and revisit that, I would say.
But
Okay.
yeah, that is, I mean, for my 2 cents, that is definitely something that we should
Continue to work on.
Oh yeah, because that's part of why we exist, to remove barriers to employment. And I mean, if you, for persons with disabilities, and if you have problems accessing things in the building, that would certainly be a barrier.
Well, the copy machines are my new thing.
Yeah.
When they didn't have the voice, I figured, okay, they're just not friendly.
Right.
So now somebody went far enough to say, okay, we have to comply, because that's federal regulations,
Right.
with one thing, but not the other.
I appreciate you all coming out.
I
and
appreciate
thank
it,
you
too.
to those of you on the phone who called in, and again, if you think of questions afterwards, feel free to use the contact information to get in touch with CARS, and we'll be happy to help you out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Yeah, good round. Somewhere near the closed Jasmine.
Mm-hmm.
Do what?
They took care of it.
So I guess the question is for the next one.
Good job.
Thank you, and thank you for your help. Well, it is much appreciated. Can you mark on your calendar,
No.